Welcome to the Beer N Bulldogs podcast. Just a quick note before we dive in. Everything we discuss here is strictly for legal, ethical, entertainment, and historical purposes. We do not promote or condone any illegal activities, including animal cruelty or dogfighting, which are not only unethical, but also violate the Animal Welfare Act of 1976. This podcast is about responsible dog ownership, the history and appreciation of the American Pit Bull Terrier, and ensuring these incredible dogs are treated with the respect and care they deserve. Let's keep it all positive and above board. Cheers.
About to go down, so who's gonna be my dogs? Cause I'm about to break some laws. I ain't supposed to get in any trouble again. If I do, they gonna put me back in the pen. But you like to dodge my calls, so I'm about to break your jaw. I ain't scared of doing time, it ain't even on my mind at all. So who's gonna feed my dog?
Welcome to Beer N Bulldogs for our second episode. And this is the show where we talk about the American Pit Bull Terrier, working breeds, and all things bulldogs. Over a cold one, of course. And today, we got a special guest for you. This man really needs no introduction. He's a conformation judge. He owns his own registry. He's the man you guys all seek for advice when you guys need some type of knowledge on dogs. Well, I'll just let him talk for himself. We're gonna say his name is Schoolboy Richard Garcia. Hey Richard, how you doing today?
Doing a little bit of traveling, not much, but in fact, I had an old dog man, old timer, very famous, David Devine came and visited me the other day. Man, we had a lot of good stories talking about old times and stuff.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, come by the house, went out to breakfast, come by, drink coffee, talk dogs. Everyday life, same thing.
Oh, that's nice, man. That's nice, man. Well, Richard, I'd like to get into it, man, and ask you a few questions about your background and, like when did you first get your first American Pit Bull Terrier?
Right. About 18 years old, 1978, and I was with my future wife, so she's always been involved with dogs with me. Even now they help. My whole family helps me do all this stuff. Anyways, you start out, I start off like a lot of people do. You buy them out of the newspaper, or you hear. Pit bulls were kind of popular back then, so they were available just locally. And then you move into registered dogs, and you meet people, start learning bloodlines,
Yeah.
And we grew up with dogs. We had working cow dogs when I was young. Game fowl is part of my culture. I like horse racing. I'm a big boxing fan. So that competitive nature has always been with me. And I don't remember how I got, hear about the pit bull, other than it was normal for people to have them.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually got into it to compete with the dogs,
Yeah.
Even though there's negatives involved with that, that's kind of what I did. And so I started competing. Later on, I started breeding my own family of dogs, developed my own family of dogs. And then from there, you meet different people. You start getting involved. I was also involved in a conformation dog show club, American Pit Bull Terrier Club. So from there, you go to dog shows and you meet different people. And then it just developed into, after I retired from competition, I started judging dog shows all over the U.S. and Mexico, South America, Europe, doing a lot of traveling, judging weight pools, judging, even having seminars in English and Spanish, going on hog hunts. It's kind of the way I think, if I'm going to speak on something, I should have some kind of experience with it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a hunter, but I get down there with the hog hunters, help them out,
Yeah.
And they want to see what you can do. If you have a name, it's supposed to be, can you handle a dog? Will you go on this hog hunt? You say you grew up country and you're used to hogs and animals and all that. So they had a lot of respect for me because I wasn't scared about getting in there, breaking dogs off hogs and butchering hogs up and all that. That was old hat to me,
Yeah.
And from there, I just started writing books and selling merch and articles, doing just whatever involved with pit bulls.
What drew you to the American Pit Bull Terrier though, like over other breeds that, of dogs? Or did you ever like any other breeds of dogs?
Yeah, oh yeah. We've had all kinds of dogs. Mutts, German Shepherds, Kelpie, which is a working dog. That's what we use. Kelpie Shepherd mixes for working cattle. And it just clicked that the pit bull is a competition dog. I like competition. I took martial arts and boxing when I was younger.
Yeah.
Again, not to just be a fan, but at least, I wasn't on any level as far as the sports go. But I had to be involved so I know what it's like. And it's the same thing with dogs. So the competition side is what drew me to the pit bull.
Sounds like you like the heart of the dog.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, me too. Oh yeah. Well, could you tell me about your first American Pit Bull Terrier? A little about your first one.
Yeah. It was I don't really remember how he was bred, but I think he was like a Carver, Bully Son, some old Ed Crenshaw stuff, maybe a little bit of Zebo in there. It's a dog I called Boom Boom, and paid $100 for him,
Yeah.
And then from there, started going to different breeders. I had dogs from Patrick, Boleo dogs, Howard Heinzel, dogs from Bobby Hall, the Bully Son stuff.
Oh man, them Howard Heinzel dogs.
Steve Dunleavy, and through that friendship, it came to a point where he had to get out of the dog, and he gave me some of his stock,
Oh, nice.
He's the one who bred Big Red, and his sister, Miss Roddy, I had them. He owned Sissy, was an inbred daughter of Jeep. He just gave me the dogs.
Nice.
And Ronald Boyles, I got dogs from Ronald Boyles. He had given me dogs too.
Well, so would it be safe to say that some of those were the dogmen that kind of inspired you on your?
Yeah, especially yeah. Well, a lot of the older dogmen, it's not so much now, even though they still do. They don't really share information or give you advice. They were just closed-minded that way until you got to know them and like that,
Yeah.
And then they would help you out. But he was the one right off the get. He would tell me anything I asked. We used to spend hours on the phone. $500 a month phone bills. And then Steve Dunleavy was an inspiration as well. And then you pick up different things from people here and there. People you talk to, make friends.
Yeah. Well, I heard you say Heinzel and stuff like that, but I was kind of wondering what bloodlines were the ones that you mainly worked with yourself, per se. The main... Boyles, and then what I eventually ended up with, the Jeep dogs, and then which turned into Jeep Red Boy Rascal. But I really liked the Boyles dogs because they were heavy on the Boleo side at that time, more heavily on the Boleo side. And I just like Boleo dogs. They're from out this way, from the west side of the United States. They're kind of a counter to it's almost like Muhammad Ali and George Foreman, Yeah.
Or the Boleo dogs are slick and they move and they have good air and they're smart compared to a lot of other dogs that are rough and strong and hard biting like that.
Well, that's what That's what I was just about to ask you, about what kind of traits you really look for in a dog.
Yeah. So I like strong. You know, in my breeding program, I try to keep two things. Other than the gameness, people talk about gameness and mouth and stuff like that, you know. I like speed and strength, so I try to keep that in my dog.
Oh, those are the traits.
Dogs were right.
Those are the traits you look for when you're about to breed a dog. Nice.
Exactly. They have to have that. If they don't have speed and strength, I wouldn't breed it. And with all the standards I have with my dogs, if they have a major flaw, I wouldn't breed it, no matter how good the dog is bred, no matter how much I like it. Even dogs that I competed with, some of them weren't good enough to breed. Good enough to win, but they had too much of a flaw that I didn't like, that I didn't want to include in my breeding program.
Well, man, yeah, no, I can totally understand that, man. You know.
Yeah. For example, let me give you an example, right?
Yeah.
When people talk about the past, you know, and this is all in the past. It's
Yeah.
all, you know,
Yes.
I haven't had dogs for years.
Mm-hmm. Everything is historical for historical purposes.
Right. When they're talking about that competition aspect, you'll hear people say, I want dogs that are game, and I want them to be hard, and they have good air, and move this way and that way. I kind of explain it like this. I want dogs that scratch hard, don't turn, stay and hold, you know, intense, not dumb, smart, right? Fast, strong, like that, because that's the type of dog I want. So that's what I tried to breed when I was making my decisions of which ones, you know, met these standards.
Yes.
And right now I'm writing book. My next book, it's almost done. It's called How to Breed the American Pit Bull Terrier. So it'll have all that stuff, examples, what I look for, how do you choose individuals. And it's just my way of doing it, because there's a ton of different ways to breed.
Mm-hmm.
But at least I have a set way of doing it. And you vary from that. There's exceptions sometimes. But I learned that if you stay within your own guidelines, you'll have more success. And what you're looking for is consistency.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
So you want dogs that have similar traits, even though there's variances in them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're breeding a family of dogs, if they all carry similar traits, and they don't even have to be real specific, and you breed those dogs, they're going to produce those similar traits.
Right.
So if it's a minor flaw, that's not a big deal. If it's a major flaw, in my opinion, what I consider a major flaw, I wouldn't breed it no matter what.
I understand. I dig that. So, like, what's your philosophy on conditioning? I like to talk about conditioning with you. Yeah.
Yeah, not a problem. You know, you're trying to get the conditioning, there's two phases to it, or two things that are important that go together. The physical conditioning and the mental conditioning. So you're trying to build the dog up to be able to perform at the best of its abilities, whether it's a short time or a long time. And to do that, you build the dog up slowly, incrementally. Even if it's the keep is 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's stages that you go through to build them up, right? Along with that, you have to have the nutrition, you have to have supplements,
Mm-hmm.
but that you're going to allow him to do. And behind that, you're peaking the dog mentally, preparing him mentally for whatever task is in front of him.
Which I do want to mention, Richard has a keep that you guys can buy from him if you guys are, you know, looking to. And listen, all dogs are different, so don't expect his keep to work for every single dog of yours. But you can look at his stuff and just kind of figure out a plan to write in your own keep. I see a lot of people on the pages that ask about, you know, other people's keeps and stuff like that. And I just always want to remind you guys that every keep is different, but he has a really good keep that you can learn some stuff from.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, my thing with the keep is because you're exactly right. Not all of them for every dog, but But what's important to understand is that the concepts of conditioning are the same.
Yes.
Those don't change. No matter what improvement there is, no matter what science is involved, there's a way to get a dog into peak condition.
Yes.
So that's kind of how I wrote my key. It's kind of like if you're standing there and we have a dog in front of us, and this is what to look for, this is what he does, this is how to increase the work. So even if you don't do a key that's exactly the same way I did, you can use other methods, but the same concept.
So you were
I
talking
think
about,
that's what's unique about it.
so you were talking about, you know, the food and the supplements and things like that. I was curious, do you lean more towards like kibble, raw feeding, or like do you mix them both? How are you about that? What do you think?
I use cooked food and kibble. So the kibble we had, it's not around today, it was called Neutro Max Stress. It was developed specifically for sporting and working dogs. And even the way they cooked it back in the day, they prepared it and all that was different than most kibbles are done today. Because the people involved with not only the kibble I used, but the supplement I used were involved in professional sports. One of them was involved with the Browns, the football team. Another one was a big hound hunting guy.
My dad's a big Cleveland Browns fan. Shout out to my dad, as a matter of fact, Jerry.
Shout
my
out,
dad.
Shout out, Dad. There you go.
He's a big Browns fan.
So it was like a hands-on experience, and you have to develop these products hands-on in real time. Look at the results, you know. So people, you know, like big raw is a big deal, right? And in my opinion, for me, it doesn't what you feed your dog, how you feed your dog, as long as it's good food, it's a balanced diet. I've never seen, no matter what anybody says, because if you think about it, in my over 40 years involved in the breed, and I know dozens of competitors, I know dozens of breeders, I know dozens of people, even with different breeds of dogs, right?
Yeah.
None of them feed the same.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're talking about handlers and conditioners, and you're talking about the top echelon guys, they all feed different.
Yeah.
So that showed me over time that if the food is good food, clean food, and you balance the diet out for the particular individual, it doesn't matter how you do it, doesn't matter what you feed them. And that goes down to whether you feed chicken, fish, or beef, or you use kibble or don't use kibble, you use raw or don't use raw, you cook it or don't cook it, it don't matter.
So
a lot of the information they put out is misinformation. It's not true.
I did have another question about the food, because I hear a lot of people say, you know, the dogs are carnivores. You don't need to feed them vegetables.
Right.
But what do you think about vegetables? Giving dogs vegetables?
Well, you know, let's say you get a vitamin mineral supplement for your dog.
Right.
You give fruits and vegetables, that's all you're doing. It's giving them a vitamin mineral supplement, but it's in regular food. And yes, canines are carnivores, right?
Right.
But they'll eat anything. And we're talking about wild animals. Not so much wolves, but coyotes, even animals. Example, just real quick. I've seen videos, and I knew this when I was younger too, of giraffes eating birds out of trees. Right? And
wow.
What tripped me out is I used to like big game hunting, just watching it, reading books about it, right? And in this book, this hunter was writing, he said he killed an elephant, right? They opened the elephant up, and there was a full-grown woman inside the elephant. So why would an elephant eat a woman? He's a herbivore. I don't know, but to me, it's food.
Yeah.
If you've been around coyotes mostly eat meat. They eat rats and lizards and squirrels and all this stuff, rabbits and all that.
Right.
But if you've ever opened up one, you see berries, you see grass, you see grains, because nature tells them that they need something.
Right.
So they're primarily carnivores, But they eat all other kinds of stuff too because they need their body needs it. And you always hear people talking, well, they go to the guts because there's a lot of nutrients there. That's true. That's right. It is. But not every animal in a pride or in a pack gets them guts. So they're going to supplement it by eating an apple or eating some grain or eating a root vegetable. So yeah, they're good for the dogs. And that's what I mean about that balanced diet.
Okay.
So for a canine, the main ingredient are protein and fat.
Okay.
So let's say 28% protein, 20% fat.
Okay.
Then you have about 5% carbohydrates, and then the rest is vitamins and minerals. So if you can balance that out with your dog, then his diet is complete.
Nice.
And animals in the wild, they just do that on their own naturally.
Yeah.
So there isn't hardly any animal except maybe a polar bear and some wolves, depending on where they live, that only eat meat.
Right.
There's very, very few.
Okay. Well, so getting back to conditioning, sometimes people may not know this term called mental conditioning. When you're,
Right.
you got your dog and he's getting ready for the hunt.
Right.
What type of stuff do you do to get that mental conditioning going for the dog, to get him mentally strong for the hunt?
Right. Right. So prior to that, what I do is I peek them out the last week. Most people do it the last week. Some people do it 10 days. Some people even 2 weeks. Right. And what you're doing through the keep is you're building up to a peak workout. Once you reach that peak workout, which for me was a week before the show, now I'm tapering down on the work. So let's say Saturday before the show is their hardest workout. And I'll just pick a number just to make it easy. 8 miles. I'm running them 8 miles, full blast, hard as they can, right?
Right.
Sunday, and then I'm gonna cut the work in half every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Saturday is 8 miles, Sunday is 4 miles, Monday is 2 miles, Tuesday is 1 mile, Wednesday is half a mile, and Thursday and Friday, I'm just putting them up, resting them. What that does is the dog wants to work, and you're still working them, but you're not giving them the same work they want. So they get amped up, they get focused, they get edgy, they get antsy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And if you do it right, right? I mean, they're jumping the walls.
Mm-hmm.
Their teeth will chatter, right? And all kinds of stuff. They'll be scratch stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're running around in circles if you don't keep them stable. Then when it's showtime, they're just so amped up and ready to go that they just cut everything loose and just time in their head, time clock, to them going 15 minutes or going 5 hours, it's the same thing.
Right.
There shouldn't be a limit in the dog's brain of how, I can only go 30 minutes and I'm done.
So,
right?
and
to do that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna, no, you go ahead and finish, because.
Right. So in that same process, as you're peeking them out mentally that last week, they're going to go off their water. They're not going to want water. So they're actually dry themselves out naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Because their blood count is high. So the last week, as they're coming down to weight, you're not taking any fat off. They're not overweight. It's just moisture that they're emptying out.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And then there's a method where people will bring them down below weight and then build them up to weight. Build them up the attitude behind that is you're building their strength up.
Yes.
But people have a conception where if you bring them down to weight, then they're weak. They ain't weak, because I didn't have my dogs heavy anyways. So even though I'm coming down in weight, I'm building up their strength.
Right. Yes.
And you just have to go through the process and see the results, monitor everything you do.
So
But some people don't even understand the concept of peaking.
yes, and that's not easy. That's not easy. I did have a question when
I say this, I'm slow, right? It takes 7 years to learn how to properly condition a dog.
yeah, it's not an easy thing, and like and every dog is different. Some dogs don't want to do certain things that other dogs want to do, or they only want to run for a short amount of time and then they want to start walking. So it's
Right.
it's
Yeah.
it's not an easy
And
task.
here's the thing with pit bull people. Even competitors and breeders in the past.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the dogs, nothing was done with them until they're an adult, right? So they'd be just sitting around all the time, not even regular exercise. That's changed over the years, and hopefully I've helped change that. Where you should be developing this dog, even if it's for legal sports, even if it's your pet. Whatever you expect your dog to do as an adult, you should be teaching it that as an infant,
Yes.
and as a pup, and as a young adult. So
Yeah.
whether it's obedience training, house training, start teaching them at 8 weeks old or 12 weeks old to work a treadmill, he'll do it naturally.
Right.
They love it.
Mm-hmm. Well,
That's been the disconnect for many, many years.
and that's why I kind of get on a few guys who be out there just they think, oh, I'm just gonna keep the dog on the chain for a whole year, not even deal with the dog at all, except for just feed it. And I'm like, no, that's a very important part. That's the time where you need to be teaching them, commands, things like that. And of course, I'm not gonna say, you need to be doing, the hardest type of conditioning on a puppy, but you should definitely be teaching them commands so that they learn who you are, and some people think that they should just leave them on the chain for a whole year.
Yeah. Well, the idea behind that is put them up, leave them alone, let them grow. But with mammals, and you hear this with humans, like children, the first 5 years of their life is their most learning, development age. Well, it's the same thing with canines. The first year is their most learning developmental age.
Mm-hmm.
So even if let's say you have an 8-week-old pup and you put him on a treadmill for 1 minute, 3 days a week.
Right.
That's all he needs. It's nothing.
Yeah.
You want to teach him to run a flirt pole, do it for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So he'll work a flirt pole. You
Yeah.
want to potty train him, house train him, obedience train him, you can do that.
Right.
So and I revert back to that. Well, how come all these dogs can do all this stuff, but a pit bull, people say, well, he don't like a treadmill. Well, he won't work a flirt pole. Well, he won't do this. He don't like swimming. That's the person's fault. It's not the dog's fault.
Yeah. No,
So my attitude with my dogs was, I'm going to teach them my key, or the concepts of it, and how I work them from when they're young. So that by the time, if they made the grade when they were older, they already know how to do my key. So it's nothing, I just take them out, boom, we're working now. Right? So that always, I kind of thought outside the box. And people would say, no, leave them alone, don't do this, let them grow them. That don't sound right, dude.
No,
that don't sound
that
right.
don't.
So I didn't follow a lot of that old way of thinking.
Me either. I mean, I always look at what the dog can do, too. You know what I mean? Especially when they're puppies. So how do you manage and house your dogs? What type of setup do you find works best?
A chain setup.
Yes.
Chain
I agree.
Setup,
I
dog
agree.
house, straw in the dog house, like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Especially in the
People don't
cold.
understand, and again, in the cold, it didn't get that cold where I was here. We get down to freezing, but in the north, they insulate the dog houses.
Mm-hmm.
They have, it's a lot different. Sometimes they bring them inside a barn during the winter and keep them inside the barn,
Yeah, I
For
got
me,
I got a nice setup like that.
the chain setup is the best because they have more freedom of movement and there's more circumference for them to move around. It's a lot better than a kennel run.
Yeah, for all you guys out there who think putting a dog on a chain is this terrible thing because you see a chain on them. No, it's good for the dog because they can move around and they can actually like feel like they're interacting and moving around. You put them in a cage. I'm not against people putting them in a cage. I'm just saying it leaves this, I feel like a feeling, right? Do you understand? You know what I'm saying, Richard? It puts a feeling on the dog that they can't approach or nobody can touch them. You know, when you go outside and you can touch your dog and, you know, or just look at them through the cage, you know, some of us out there probably get lazy.
They have that feeling of they're confined.
Yeah.
Right? It's in the old days, you know, you used to go to the zoo and you see a coyote or a big cat in a cage, right? Or a wolf, and they're pacing back and forth like that. Because that confinement drives them nuts. Very seldom relax because there's not enough room. They need more room to move around.
Right.
So that's what the chain provides. And I'm not against kennel runs, I'm not. But I'm saying the best hookup for dogs, for me, is a chain setup, just for the reasons you said.
Yeah.
Or even a cable run, right? A cable run, they have a lot more freedom of movement and a lot more area they can cover.
Yeah.
And chain hookup, you know, tethering, collars has been around for thousands and thousands of years.
Thousands, yeah.
So the people in Mesopotamia, the Egyptians, the Greeks and Romans and the Assyrians and all these people understood the benefits of how to properly contain their animals, then what would be different 4,000 years later? They were doing it back then. And not only did they domesticate dogs, but they had leopards and cheetahs and hyenas and zebras that were pets or they used for work. Right?
Right.
So I don't see why that would change. You know, if you how old is a collar? And they'll show you metal collars and leather collars going back 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 years that people were using them, and leads and chain hookup.
Yep.
There's you know, that people knew what they were doing. Yes. If there was something wrong with it, they would have confined them differently.
Yes. So
you know, people look at it and it's the way it looks. It looks bad to them. It doesn't mean it is bad. It just looks, you know. Yeah.
It's not like the dogs are being put through slavery. They act like the dogs are being.
Yeah, like that. Yeah.
So how do you balance like your conditioning, breeding, and your personal life, or when you know, I know. Are you out? You're out of the dogs today, or you still keep some dogs?
Yeah, I don't have dogs myself, but when I got out of the dogs, I gave them to my protege or my friend, you know, same thing. And he's kept my blood going for been 40 years now.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Me personally, my family is always involved in everything. So for me, it was a family thing. My kids are involved, my brother, other relatives, my wife. So it's all encompassing. Even the things I do today, my books, my stick, all this stuff, I have family helping me. Right? Whether it's do this stuff online, my videos, all that. So that's the way I grew up, and
All right.
Okay, Richard, this is the part of the show where I throw some quick fire questions at you.
Sounds good. Hit me.
All right. Treadmill or carpet mill?
Well, there's different uses. Carpet mill is generally deemed to be used for strength work because there's more resistance to it. Some of them are free movement, just depends on the kind of carpet mill you get. The slat mill is more free turning, free spinning. But I prefer a slat mill because you can put a brake on it and you can tighten up the tension and you can build strength that way.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, that is the proper term, the slat mill.
Right.
Okay, collar or harness?
Again, depends on the type of work. So for me, when I was doing road work, which is running the dog, not hand walking is different. So I'm using a bicycle. Some people use their own vehicle. Some people use an ATV or something else. I like a collar because there's more freedom of movement.
Yes.
When I was doing strength work, I liked a harness
Yeah.
because they can dig in with their back feet, right,
For
and
the
build
pullers.
strength that way. Pullers, right? Now, if you're doing hand walking and the dog pulls, then I prefer a harness that way because they can't have their throat constricted. They have to have breathing. So you want a dog to work as much as he can with his mouth closed, breathing through his nose.
Mm-hmm.
And if they pull hard when you're hand walking them, that collar constricts their breathing.
Right.
So it all depends on the dog, what type of work you're doing. Even on a treadmill, some people like using a harness. Some people like using a collar. I prefer the collar because the harness can be constricting. They don't have that same freedom of movement. You can get a harness that is conducive to that type of work,
Mm-hmm.
but for me, it was just easier to use a collar on a treadmill.
Kibble or raw?
Well, for maintenance, for me, it was easier to feed kibble. I don't have anything against raw, but again, throughout the dog's life, there's times I'm feeding the dog raw because my dogs would eat anything. So
Mm-hmm.
any scraps, it wasn't their daily diet, but if they're scraps or I have a piece of meat, I used to cook my food. People talk negative about that all the time. There's not really any negatives to it.
No.
And it is a certain way to cook it and all that. But so I was
Get some good
feeding raw
broth.
a lot of times.
You can get some good
Yeah,
broth doing that. I tell people that
yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah. And in the broth, there's vitamins and minerals. There's electrolytes.
Yeah.
Uh, and but with raw, they have this concept. That's what dogs eat in the wild. So I understand that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But these aren't wild dogs anymore. So I'll say this: if you're feeding a dog raw, in my opinion, it's best to cut the pieces up in small pieces. Unless you're giving them chicken bones like that, let them eat it.
Okay.
Because depending on what you feed and how much and all that, you have to get where the digestion is timed to your workout,
Yes.
right? So if you cut it up, they're going to digest it quicker, and it's just easier when you take them out to empty out that they're going to empty everything out.
Mm-hmm.
If it takes a longer period of time for them to digest, they may still have food in their intestines. Even though they went to the bathroom, you think they're empty, they're not empty.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna get negative feedback on that, but the
Yeah.
only way to see it is to do it, right? Is to do
Right.
it and see, right? Just because you see your dog go to the bathroom doesn't mean he's empty. And the same with kibble. I've worked dogs on kibble, went through the process, and after the show, they're puking the whole kibble. So
You know
again,
what?
it depends.
I was gonna
Go ahead.
say, I know this is quick fire questions, but now that you just said that, do you think it's all right to have a day fast for a dog so that they can get
Yeah,
their food more day?
yep, yeah, you can do that. And it helps clean them out, you know. And you can give them stuff to clean them out. You can give them antitoxins. You can give berries. You can give olive oil. You can, different things that you can give them. Cod liver oil, something that will loosen their bowels. And help the digestive process. You can give them enzymes. There's all kinds of stuff. That's why, I mentioned before, there's no best way to feed. And if I didn't, I'll say it now. There's no best food. There's no best way to feed. There's no best conditioning. There's no best nothing. It's all based on the results, your experience, and the results you get from what you're doing.
Mm.
Because, like I said, even within a team, let's say Havana Boys or STP, these guys all conditioned dogs, none of them work their dogs the same. None of them feed the same. And that's just from talking to them and knowing how people do things. They don't even pick the same weight for the same dog. One guy might like him at 42, another one likes him at 41, one likes him at 43.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the best? The best is if you get it right and you have a good dog and the results show you what's best. And that's including feed, the nutrition, all that.
Okay, so tug of war or fetch?
Well, I did both. They all have different benefits to them. You know, fetch is a quick. It's like sprinting. You know, so it's a quick workout, like the flirt pole. It should be quick, fast, not long in duration, right? Tug of war works different muscles, mostly their back end. If they're planted on all 4 feet, you know, it helps their neck muscles. It really doesn't increase their bite that much, their mouth, you know. It does a little bit, but it teaches them to hold on for longer periods of time, and it teaches them where their mouth is closed, again, to breathe through their nose.
Yes. Flirt pole or spring pole?
Well, again, 2 different workouts. That would be the same as fetch and tug of war, right? So the spring pole building strength, flirt pole for speed, quick reflexes, fast twitch muscle. You can incorporate, you know, all different kinds of things, you know. But I'll say this as a warning to people. The more you do with your dog when you're conditioning them, the more chance you have of screwing them up. Because too much can be bad.
Yeah.
Right? You could overwork something, you could over fatigue them, you could injure them. So I kept mine simple. Not that I didn't do all that stuff, including swimming, but I did that as they were growing up, just to develop their muscles and develop their attitude and help their mindset, like that. So I did all kinds of stuff with my dogs, but in keep, it was very simple. I worked on building their air and then their strength.
Yeah, I'm guilty of it, you know, overworking the dogs. I'm guilty of it, man. I did that. I did it for I've done it a few times,
Yeah.
you know, so you know, you
Yeah, well,
learn
me
trials and
too.
mistakes.
With all my experience, you know, I still screwed up. But unless you go through that process, you don't know. So for me, a negative aspect or a negative result is a learning experience.
Yes, it is.
The only thing that keeps it negative, if you keep doing the same thing over and over,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You got to learn from it and stop doing it at some point, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
you know the limitations of your dog. You know when too much is too much, but you have to push them past the point of too much to know where that wall is for them. And again, I prefer to do that before I competed with them when they were younger. That way I would know how much to push them, when to back off, when to give them rest, and when to increase the work, when to increase the food, like that.
Oh, yeah. I learned doing that. It was almost like I got told in a different way too. One, I had this dog, and he's over there, and I put a. Have you ever seen the horse spring,
Yeah,
like the one they pull for their food or the ball
yeah,
or whatever? It has these hooks that
yeah,
are off the side of it, and I mean it worked
right.
good for a long time. And I'm just working him. I'm like, keep going. I could tell he was tired, and all of a sudden he jumped up. I could tell he was tired, but I just and hooked his arm in there. And
Yeah,
he was just hanging, and I'm like, oh my gosh!
yeah,
I'm like, oh, I go to grab him and try. I'm getting bit because
yeah,
he didn't know what was going on, you know. And
yeah,
you know, and then
yeah.
I back up and I'm like, I'm trying to help you, fool. And he finally realizes, and then I pull his arm off the dang hook, man. But I was like, man, never again. You know what? That's what I get for trying to just work you like that,
Yeah,
man. But
yeah,
because I see the fun in it, and I'm like, man, we get energized together. But I knew he was getting tired, and then he started trying to, instead of bite on on the thing, he wanted to try to bite the spring. He, I
Yeah.
forget whether it was a rope or what I had or a tire, but
Yeah.
I think he tried to grab the spring and he jumped up higher and then
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yep. Yep. And a lot of times it's not a problem until there's a problem.
yeah,
And you might have put him on there 100 times and he never went for that spring, but that one time he goes for the spring, he'll get it or gets hooked up,
mhm,
So again, it's a learning process. Then, if you're going to use that same spring, you just put it high enough where he can't reach it. So
yeah,
rather than have it down low by the bait, you can have it up high where it connect to whatever you got it connected to. And there's
yeah,
less of a chance of him injuring himself. But again, things work and they work and it works good. And you put a bunch of dogs on and that one fool gets up there and hurts himself,
yeah. I got one more for you. Road work or hiking?
I prefer road work. It's easier. Hiking has a lot of benefits. And I know people that have done that, right? And a lot of this is the time consumption. So unless you live in the mountains already, you'd have to drive to the mountains
Right.
and do that. It has a lot of benefits and it's good and fresh air and natural. And that's why I preferred road work because they're out in nature, they're breathing fresh air. There's a lot of things going on where they don't get bored and they can keep focus on something or change their mind or direction or whatever it is. So again, they have different benefits. And the thing with dogs, especially when you're conditioning, is the time involved or just having dogs. There's a time factor. I hear this all the time, I go out there and I walk 10 miles with my dog and then I condition them for 4 hours and 8 hours and all this stuff. For me, it's a lot of BS because there's not enough time in the day to do that. Right.
Right.
So let's say you have a bunch of dogs. If you're just going out there every day, which you have to do every day, you're cleaning their area, you're changing their water, you're feeding them, spend time petting them, right? Let's say it
Mhm.
takes you 15 minutes per dog. If you got 4 dogs, that takes you an hour. If you got 8 dogs, that's 2 hours. If you've got 12 dogs on your yard, that's 3 hours of a day that you have to spend with your dog. So when I hear people say they spend all this time with the dogs, they either don't have a job, don't do nothing else. That's all they're doing with their dogs. That's not including other maintenance, cleaning their area, changing houses, building houses, deworming them, giving them their vaccinations, females in whelp, all this stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things people say, the math don't math up. It's not what they're purporting to do.
Okay. I do have another question I'd like to ask you. Okay. All right. Okay, Richard. So, what kind of legacy do you hope to leave on the APBT community?
Well, those words come out, I don't really think that way, but what I'd like people to remember me for, if they could, is for being open, honest, helping people with information, whatever I could do, leave something for my family, you know,
Yeah.
and just being you know, a proponent of the breed, a supporter of the breed and the people involved. That the titles and all that, I get them all the time. I try and stay humble. I appreciate it, but that's not my way of thinking. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but you get accolades from your peers. I don't try and build myself up. I don't try and make myself something I'm not or brag or things like that. The best compliment you can get is from your peers, from people you've been involved with, people you connect with. It's kind of like if let's say you're selling dogs, right? If you have good dogs and they're consistent and they're successful and
Right.
they're well bred, you don't have to advertise. You're going to have people beating down your door trying to get your dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm the same way personally. I don't have to give accolades, but I won't lie, and I don't really like to talk crap about dogs or dogmen, especially. I just don't get involved with it. It doesn't do me any good.
No.
I'm not one of those type of people,
Yeah.
There's enough of that already. I'll let somebody else do it. And I don't, people do whatever they want. It's just not my way. It serves me no benefit, So that's I'll leave that up to my peers, when I'm gone, whatever they think of me.
You know what? I respect that. Actually, you know, that was a question I had for you, and it was funny that I just saw this like interview by Mike Tyson, and they were like, "What type of legacy are you trying to leave?" He says, "I don't care about a legacy." He says, "Because when I'm dead and gone, it doesn't really matter." You know what I mean? I'm just here.
Yeah,
I'm just living like everyone else. So I do
exactly.
respect that, and you know what, and I love that. That's a humble, that's a humble way of thinking about it. And like you said, it's not about the peers will speak about you if that's what it is.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Because with these dogs, with the dog, you can't fake it. If I
no,
was BSing people or I was lying or I was, misrepresenting myself or my dogs or something like that, somebody's going to know about it.
yeah,
It could
yeah,
come up in a year, 5 years, whatever. Right. So it doesn't do anybody any good to embellish something that's not true
yeah,
because it's going to come out
yeah.
and then
Then the
everybody's
legacy,
going to attack you.
then the
Yeah.
legacy is gonna look even worse, trying to say that
Yeah.
I was this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Right. Right.
and I respect that. Uh,
Yeah.
So, like, what's one myth about the American Pit Bull Terrier that that you'd like to debunk?
That they're all people killers, baby killers, stuff like that. The majority of them are not. And there's some that are, right? But it's a very, very small percentage,
Oh,
right?
but
With
there's some
those,
Belgian
yeah.
Malinois there. There's some Belgian Malinois that I've seen tear
There, there,
people
there's there's cocker spaniels and chows and every. It's just the nature of the breed with some dogs. They're canines. They communicate with their mouth. Sometimes that communication is biting.
apart.
But overall, the pit bull is not even high on the list of human attacks, right? Now, a
Yeah,
lot of the dogs that do bite people and attack people, they call them pit bulls, but they're not pit bulls. They're not.
no, they're
So
not.
that's one myth I've been fighting for years and years. It's kind of like if you ask people, what's the what's the number one country as far as the number of guns that they have in their country, right? Most people are going to say the U.S. because we have the Second Amendment and we're not even in the top 20 of countries that have guns, just the general public having them. But there's that concept because we're Americans, the way we are, everybody has guns.
Yeah,
Switzerland has more guns per capita than we do, and they're a neutral country. They don't even fight any wars. So you get that myth with the pit bulls as far as biting people and baby killers and all that, and it's not true.
yeah, no, no.
My dogs never bit anybody, and all my kids and some of my grandkids and my nieces and nephews were all raised with my dogs. Never, not even think about biting a kid.
And you said you had some Bolio dogs before, right?
Right.
That's one of those things I want to say. I've had some Bolio dogs, and that type of story. I'm glad that he said it. Everybody said, "Oh, Bolio dogs bite people." That's a myth. That's just it's about how you raise your
Yeah.
dogs
Yeah.
too.
A lot of it has to do with that. And a lot of the bloodlines, they are more susceptible to being
Yeah,
human aggressive. But even within those bloodlines, I've seen tons of the dogs like that don't bite nobody.
yeah,
They wouldn't even think about biting it. Bully Son dogs are known for that. And I've had some, and they were human aggressive.
yeah,
But I've seen other ones
Oh
whole
yeah,
yard full,
yeah.
whole generations of them that they don't bite people. So a lot of it has to do with the culling process also. People will accept dogs like that. They'll keep dogs like that where it's unnecessary. You don't have to. Because my attitude was, okay, let's say it's a good dog or a great dog that's human aggressive.
Yeah.
It didn't matter to me because I could have good dogs and great dogs that weren't. So the result end of the dog is the same. It's just the ones I had weren't aggressive and someone else had them and they were. So I didn't tolerate after some point I didn't tolerate human aggressive dogs. I
Yeah.
would not have them.
No, I
And
understand.
if everybody would go through that culling process, there would be less and less of them, you know? So that's just our way of looking at it.
For someone getting into the breed, new to the breed, what's some of what's one important advice that you would give them?
Learn the history and the traits and the bloodlines, and it's more than one, but learn as much as you can about the breed before you ever get one dog.
Hmm.
And that's what I did. It served me well. People call me a historian sometimes, because I have all this information
You
stuck in
are.
my head.
You are.
It's just from years and years of reading and seeing and doing, and it just sticks in there. And that's why I'm able to share it with people because it's hands-on experience. I still have a lot of the literature. I have my own literature that I've written. And for me, anything I'm involved with, I like boxing, I like martial arts, I like vehicles, American muscle, I like guns. So anything I'm involved with, I want to know the history of it, how it works, what different types there are. With a pit bull, it's the same thing. I want to know all the bloodlines and breeders, where they came from, what are the traits of the dog, what the temperament of the pit bull, how many different types there are. That's just my way of doing things, and it served me well. Now, I never thought I'd be doing this, but it served me well.
Yeah. Okay. Um, um, is there any book that you would recommend? I mean, besides your work, would there be any book that you would recommend for a beginner who wanted to learn more about the dogs?
Yeah, my favorite book is 30 Years with Fighting Dogs by George C. Armitage. So Armitage book. Another one would be the Colby book,
Yes.
and then another one would be the Crenshaw book. But the Armitage book, it's an easy read. It kind of has a little bit of everything, and it's kind of the history of some of the original dogs. He wrote it. He started in 1900. He wrote it in 1930. So it goes back in history. I would start there,
Okay.
and you see some of the famous dogs, some of the famous matches, the way he conditioned, what he fed, different events. It's a easy read, easy to understand. And some of the verbiage he uses, it's old, so you got to kind of figure out what the word means, but you can do that too.
Okay. I know that you wrote the Big Red book. Um, is there any other books that you put out that I may not know of? I know you keep two.
Yeah. Yep. I've written 3 books so far. The
Okay.
Big Red Handbook, Family Bred and Raised, and Dogs, Dogmen, and Bloodlines.
Right.
Those are the 3 I have now. And then the next one will be How to Breed the American Pit Bull Terrier. I'm actually in process. I have several books. It just
Okay.
depends on which one do I want to put out, and then I'll finish it. But I have a novel. I'm going to call that. I won't say the name, but I have a novel I'm writing. Fiction. I
Okay.
have a picture book coming up. I'm going to put a book together about different keeps.
Yeah.
All these different keeps that I've picked up over the years with the permission of the people involved with them. A lot of them. I'm grateful and impressed
Yeah.
because they'll allow me to do stuff or they'll talk about stuff with me where they wouldn't with someone else. You know,
Right. Right.
they'll allow me to use their information, and I'm just grateful to them.
Yes. Yes. If people want to find that work of yours or just learn more about you, where could they go to, maybe purchase your books and just, learn
Yeah,
more about you?
yeah, yeah. You can get everything I have directly from me. I don't have a website or anything like. Maybe one day I will, but you can contact me for any of my merchandise, books, sticks, shirts, keeps, old reprints, sporting dog journals, different things. Uh, my On Facebook Messenger or my email, richardjschoolboy60@gmail.com, or on Instagram.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And
I
then
gotta.
I also have a registry, ICDR. I register pit bulls. And
Yes.
then of course, I have my YouTube channel. Uh, you know,
Yeah, if you need to get your dogs registered, and I've talked about this with Richard, you need a little more privacy, let's say, with your dogs in your registry. This is the man to go to, you know. With so many laws where people are trying to ban the American Pit Bull Terrier today, you don't really know who you are registering with and who they're sharing your information with. But
right.
Richard keeps a very confidential thing with people's dogs, and that's why it's good to for a registry like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I look at it, it's for the protection of the breed and it's protection for the protection of the person. So I don't share anything publicly. If they want to share their whatever, they can do it. That's theirs. It's their dog. I won't do it. I don't keep anybody's information. Like let's say throughout in the future, you purchase something from me, right? And then later on you purchase later on. Every time you buy something from me, I'm going to ask you, send me your name and address because I don't keep it on file.
Yeah,
And people they go, yeah, that's right. Every time I buy something from you, Richie, you always ask me for my name and address. You don't keep it. I said, nope, I don't keep it. I don't keep nothing on file. I don't want it. So with the registrations, the way I look up who you are or what dog it is that if you want to, let's say you register a dog, then you breed it and you want to register pups off them, I have to go by your registration number. And once you give me your registration number, then I look it up. Okay, that's this dog and that dog. There's no connection between you and the dog itself. It's only by the registration number. And again, when you register a litter of pups or another dog, I'm going to ask you for your name and address again,
yeah,
because I don't keep it on file. I don't.
yeah. So, I just want to give you your flowers, or you know what? I'm gonna say, give a dog a bone, and
Thank you.
and thank you for your time. We appreciate you here on Beer and Bulldogs, and I just want to say, Schoolboy lives.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, Marcus. We'll do this again if you want. We'll make it a regular thing. However you want to do it, and I just appreciate it.
Oh
Anytime
yeah,
you need something, just hit me up. Hit me up, brother.
oh
We're
yeah.
good.
I might start doing that where I post up a few guys on there.
Yeah, yeah, we can do
Of
that.
course,
A lot of the people I know.
I'll discuss it with you first before I just pop you on there with somebody.
Yeah, yeah,
Who the heck is that
yeah,
guy?
yeah. Sounds good. Yeah, that's the way we do it. But we'll stay in touch. And thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. All right, Richard. Well, you have a good night. And to all the people out there in Bulldog Land, Beer and Bulldogs, thank you for tuning in. Till next time. Cheers.